again, YouTube family. Thanks for those of you who are joining me on this video. Again, if you like the videos, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the channel, help us grow, and let's dive in. This video is about the Republican primary. I decided to do a video and talk about the Republican primary. I'm going to try and also do one about the Democrat primary, although for the Democrat primary it's a bit different since they're not really, the Democrat Party is trying to avoid a primary. They've already said they're going to hold no debates. So Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy Jr., the two people running opposed to Joe Biden, are really not going to have any easy path to get their voice out there, to get their name and face out there. And they're not going to get a chance to debate Joe Biden and try and bring their perspective to the table. I believe personally that Robert Kennedy Jr. is a uniquely odd and out-of-place character, since he seems to be really appealing to people on the right, not so much on the left. And his polling, I believe, can be attributed to his name. He's Robert Kennedy Jr. His father is one of the prominent, still really liked and respected politicians of the 20th century, along with his uncle, JFK. I think for Robert Kennedy Jr., his name is carrying him to the point he's got to right now. And, but we're not talking about the Democrats, this is about the Republicans. So the Republican Party, I've said it before on this channel, I'll probably say it again. As of right now, the Republican Party is absolutely a cult of personality, and that personality is Donald Trump. It hasn't changed, despite all of the court battles that are being ramped up, criminal charges, over 90 criminal charges. Trump has been indicted for the fact that he's already lost his defamation lawsuit against E. Jean Carroll. And, I mean, honestly, as soon as he lost his defamation lawsuit against E. Jean Carroll, he went out in public, in front of television cameras, and made the same exact statements that got him owing her $5 million from the first time around. So, as far as I know, she is still suing him again because he turned around after losing a defamation lawsuit, made the same claims in public that got him to lose the first one. That's how dumb he is. That's how dumb Donald Trump is. He will lose that defamation lawsuit and not realize if you make the same comments in a new context, in a new place, you can be sued again. It's not like she's already sued you and won, you owe her $5 million. You can say whatever you want and not be harmed by it. No, you can be sued again. But Donald Trump is too stupid to know that, and he's too out of control. He cannot help himself but to do the stupidest thing available to be done. But he is way ahead in the Republican primary. So let's go ahead and look at some polling data for the Republican primary. This polling data was pulled prior to the first debate. I will also attempt to do a video on the first debate, breaking that down and the craziness that was the first Republican debate. It wasn't as crazy as it would have been if Trump had been there. I mean, honestly, it seemed more adult than what you would get from a Donald Trump participating. But Donald Trump chose to, instead of participating in the debate, go on Tucker Carlson's ex-Twitter show and be counter programming provided in lieu of the debates he did not want to participate in. And honestly, he was thumbing his nose at the Republican Party by saying, I'm not going to participate in your debates. I'm going to do my own show with Tucker, and you can just suck on that. I mean, that's literally Donald Trump's perspective on the Republican primary. I mean, the debate. I mean, I believe he should have debated, honestly. because it doesn't make much sense to have the person who's leading not be out there. I mean, he's claiming all these tremendous things about himself. If you really think that much about yourself, go and defend yourself on a debate stage, honestly. And so, to a degree, I believe Donald Trump does not believe the stuff he says about himself, because he's not willing to go out and defend it on the debate stage. But as it is, he's not being forced to go out and debate. He chose not to go out and debate. And this is the polls. This standing was, as I said, prior to the debate. And Trump, this is Real Clear Politics polling, and they're showing Trump with an average. This is an average of a number of different prominent polling organizations. And it's showing Trump at 55.1. Well over half the Republican electorate still in polls are saying they support Donald Trump. And as you can see, that line leading up to the dot at the right side, his polling has been going up. It's been on an uptick. Ron DeSantis, his primary challenger, everybody thought would be the person primarily challenging Trump, has been on a constant decline. And honestly, DeSantis had a slight bump when he first announced, and then he's mostly been on his way down since then. And DeSantis is sitting at 14.5. At the top of the page, you see the actual color-coded legend that shows who is where. Trump's at 55.1. At number 2, DeSantis at 14.5. Ramaswamy, number 3, at 7%. Mike Pence, 4.2% in 4th. Nikki Haley in 5th at 3.7%. Tim Scott at 2.9%. Christie at 2.7%. And then Hutchinson and Burgum 0.5 apiece. Apparently they polled 1% or higher in the number of polls that were required to make the debate stage. As we saw, they made the debate stage. 0.4% for Hurd and 0.3% for Elder. There are people running in this primary who are not depicted, and there are some people running in this Republican primary who aren't even on the polls. This is another look at the polls. It actually lists the individual polls that Real Clear Politics was referencing. On the left side, you have the polling organizations. On the far right side, it shows how many points Trump is up per poll. And it looks like plus 27 is Donald Trump's worst performance in these polls. Other than that, plus 37 is his worst performance. So he is in a domineering lead in the Republican primary. Republicans are not ready to quit Donald Trump just yet. In some of these polls, like for instance, you have the Insider Advantage poll that's showing Haley at 11%, much higher than her average. That's by far the biggest average she has, the biggest number she has out of the individual polls. For Pence, he's polling at 6% in 2 different polls. Other than that, it's pretty low. And you have Ramaswamy at 10% in 1, 11% in 2 polls. So he's double digits in 3 separate polls. And for DeSantis, his highest polling number is 18 in 2 separate polls, Quinnipiac and the Insider Advantage poll. But outside of those, there's nobody else that's reaching double digits in an individual poll. For some of these, you can see Hutchinson wasn't included on the New York Post poll. He also wasn't on Burgum wasn't on the New York Post poll. Neither was Elder. You have Hurd that was not on the Yahoo News poll. Elder that was not on the Emerson poll. So some of these polling organizations, Elder also was not on the Reuters Ipsos poll. Some of these polling organizations are not including some of the candidates, which some candidates have brought up as a problem, and for good reason. I mean, it is a problem. If you are not included on the polling, it's going to be very hard for you to reach 1% or higher. So here I've collected a group of people who are in the primary, who I'm looking at as having no chance whatsoever of winning the Republican Party's nomination. In that group, you have on the upper left Asa Hutchinson. He is the former Arkansas governor. He's also a former manager of the Bill Clinton impeachment back in the 90s. And he is polling, on average, less than 1%. Next to him, you have Doug Burgum, who is, and also Hutchinson's 72 years old. So the guy on the upper left, Asa Hutchinson, former Arkansas governor, 72. Like I said, I'm assuming he's running just to keep name relevance. Just to convince himself that he's staying relevant in politics. I don't know any other reason for him to run. I don't understand why these people in their 70s want to stay relevant in politics. Why not just retire and live your life out? Then you have Doug Burgum, who is 67. He's the North Dakota governor. He's the one in the glasses next to Hutchinson. And he's also a former tech executive. He's also averaging less than 1%. Doug Burgum is also quite individually wealthy. And he and the guy next to him, Perry Johnson, who is also, I believe, a billionaire in the low billions, but still stupidly rich, were offering gift cards, because one of the requirements to make the debate was to have, I believe it was 40,000 individual donors. It doesn't matter how much they donate, as long as 40,000 individual people donate to your campaign. And Doug Burgum was self-financing his primary campaign, but because of that requirement, he needed people to donate, along Perry Johnson did as well, and they were offering $20 gift cards for any donation. So that is, you could literally donate $1 to their campaign, in return get a $20 gift card. So they were basically giving away, in that particular scenario, giving away $19 to get a donation to try and reach the requirement for the debate. And it worked for Doug Burgum. He made the debate for Perry Johnson. He did not. I assume with the giveaway, he probably got enough donations. He probably didn't meet the polling requirement. But again, Perry Johnson, Doug Burgum, Asa Hutchinson, Francis Suarez, Larry Elder, Ryan Binkley, Will Hurd, everybody on this page is not in every poll. And so when you're not in every poll, and you have, I believe Suarez and Hurd have both brought this up, that their own candidacy is being undermined by not being included in every poll. If you're not in every poll, that decreases the chances of you being able to reach 1% in enough of the polls to make the debates. Out of this page, you had Asa Hutchinson and Doug Burgum both made the debates. I don't know that they'll make the next one, because typically the requirements get higher with future debates. But Perry Johnson, Will Hurd, Francis Suarez, Larry Elder, and Ryan Blinkley did not make the debate. So Suarez, in the lower hand left with the slick back hair, he's 45 years old. He's the mayor of Miami. He defied DeSantis' COVID approach. His time in office has been marred by some corruption issues, and he was the one that I was saying had said that if he does not make the first debate, he will probably bow out of the primary. He did not make the first debate. I assume if he's not already bowed out, he will soon, because, as I said, it's only going to get harder to make future primaries, future debates. Perry Johnson, the guy up there next to Doug Burgum, the older guy with the oddly red-looking hair. He's 75 years old. He's a businessman, as I said, quite wealthy. He was known as a quality guru. He was also a champion bridge player, also polling at less than 1%. And I don't know why you're rich, 75 years old, and you get into this primary. As far as someone like Perry Johnson, I don't know why he's there. Perhaps he's one of these wealthy businessmen, has a lot of investments, and he figures, I'll try and run and grab the bull by the horns, and instead of paying politicians to be corrupt for me, I'll just be corrupt for myself, perhaps. I don't know if that was his rationale. You have Perry Johnson, wealthy, quite elderly, and participating in this primary for the first time, as far as I know, in his life. And he has no chance. He's just going to spend money. Perhaps it's just a vanity project for him to have run for president. Asa Hutchinson, as I pointed out earlier, he's in the upper left. He's the former Arkansas governor. He's 72 years old. And he was the manager on the Bill Clinton impeachment, also polling very poorly. He's got no chance of winning this. Most of the people who were in Arkansas, living in Arkansas when he was the governor, probably could not tell you what the name of the governor was when he was in office for them. Doug Burgum, same thing with him, the North Dakota governor. I would assume most of the people in North Dakota could not tell you the name of their governor, could not point him out in a lineup. Will Hurd in the upper right-hand corner, he is a former Texas congressman, former CIA officer. He's also polling very poorly. He's 45 years old. He's not that old. And for someone like Will Hurd, I can understand if politics is where he wants to go, that he's going to keep some relevance by participating in this primary. Same thing for Suarez. He's 45 years old. He and Will Hurd, both 45. They're both young enough right now. Perhaps it's just a matter of getting their name out there, getting their picture out there. Unfortunately, it's not working for Suarez because he's not in all the polls and he's not making the debate stage. So he's getting less seen. Same thing for Will Hurd. He's not making the debate stage. He's not in every poll. And Will Hurd is the one who has pointed that out, the unfairness of not being included in polls. And I would agree that if someone is running, they should be included in polls. Even if most of the people don't know who they are, I don't really care. They should be in the poll because they're competing. Larry Elder, the one on the bottom right, he's 71 years old. He's a media personality. He's a right-wing media personality. He does also have prior domestic abuse allegations in his past. And he, again, is polling very poorly and did not make the debate stage. He has no chance of winning this nomination. But he's also in his 70s. I don't understand. He's got, I assume, a decent gig going wherever he's at on talk radio or whatever. Probably doing well enough financially. I don't understand why you get into this at 71. You don't have that many years left to try and break through when most people don't know who you are, and so you've got to establish who you are, what you're about, and it's not going to happen this time around. In 4 years, he'll be 75, and he's not getting younger, he's getting older, and people aren't going to be any more interested. Doug Burgum is 67. He's the tech executive governor of North Dakota. And then you have Ryan Binkley, I've not talked much about. He's 55 years old. He's on the far right side between Hurd and Elder. And he's a Dallas area businessman, a pastor at a church that he started. So just the fact that he's a pastor at a church he started would make me we're not really interested in him, because I assume he's a con man. He's started a church to con people out of money. He may be quite wealthy, and that's fine for him. He's 55. He does have years ahead of him. For someone like Binkley, maybe he's thinking politics is where he wants to pivot into from his religion grift, and so he's getting his name out there. He was trying to get his face out there. It's not working because he did not make the debate stage. So he's in with the group of no chance. People that just have no shot at actually making this. And so now I will go to people who do have a shot. Here we have Mike Pence. He was on the debate stage. His polling numbers on average are pretty low. Less than 5% on average. He's 64 years old. For him, the window is also closing. He's former vice president for Trump. He's very much an evangelical. He appeals to the most right-wing evangelicals of the Republicans. And he was a target of hanging on January 6th by Trump supporters. So I would say, why is he even in this? You literally had Donald Trump supporters on January 6th chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Those are people who will vote. There are Republicans, a large percentage, over 50%, said they supported the people on January 6th. And those people on January 6th were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." So Mike Pence got to sit there, take all the crap from Trump, be the lapdog for Trump, be the guy that tries to bridge the divide between the Republican establishment and Donald Trump. And what he gets for it is voters chanting to hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence in the past has fought against workers' rights. He supports school vouchers along with private and charter schools. And that's something you'll hear a lot probably in the upcoming debates, is stuff like vouchers for students, and claiming that this is some kind of freedom for parents, which it's not. Because if you look at the amount of money that would come in a voucher, it's not going to come close to paying for private schooling from K through 12. What it does is it gives money back to the wealthy people who are going to send their kids to private schools anyway. For them, it's not having to pay that tax anymore. They're getting the money back that they paid in, instead of paying to help public schools be better for the bulk of the country. It's like a refund to wealthy people. But the average working American is still not going to be able to afford private school, and the ones that do will do so while cash strapped. Just a matter of fact. Mike Pence is a big supporter of the fossil fuel companies, while he also adamantly opposes clean energy initiatives. And he's also a supporter of loose gun control rights, along with hunting of captive animals. And that is where wealthy people go, pay money to hunt an animal that's not only captive in a confined area, but also been drugged up so it doesn't pose a threat to the wealthy people that are going to hunt it. He supports that. And anyone that supports that, too weak, too out of place to be president. Sorry, Mike. And then you have Nikki Haley. She's the former governor of South Carolina, former Trump administration cabinet member, and former member of the South Carolina State House. She is a career politician, and she does not stand, as far as I can see, a chance of becoming the Republican nominee. At this point, I would say there is near zero chance that Republican voters will select a woman, just like I don't believe they'll select a person of color. Unfortunately for Vivek Ramaswamy, someone I still have to talk about. But here is a video of Nikki Haley, and it shows why I believe she really has no shot in the Republican primary.
Let me go back to my original question, though, because anybody that is looking or seeking a nomination, you're going to be comparing and contrasting your policy positions, your views, what direction you want to take the country with your competitors. Right now, there's former President Trump is the only other candidate for the nomination. We expect many others, maybe even Mike Pompeo, who was on earlier in the program today. Where do you see, if you see, policy differences beyond what you mentioned, which are generational differences? What specific policy areas would you say part with Donald Trump?
What I am saying is I don't kick sideways. I'm kicking forward. Joe Biden is the president. He's the one I'm running against. And what I'm saying is you don't have to be 80 years old to be president. We don't need to have these same people going back again. We need something new. We need a new generation of fighters. We need people that understand where the American, your average American, is coming from, and we shouldn't be afraid to fight for that. And that's what I'm willing to do. I'm not going to kick sideways. I don't have time time for that. That's not my focus. I'm kicking forward. It's all about Joe Biden, and it's all about the people in America winning again. And that's why we want everybody to go to NikkiHaley.com, because we're in this to win it.
All right, Governor, we're going to be following. Obviously, this race has now begun. We'll follow it every step of the way. We hope you'll come back. Thanks for being with us tonight. Congratulations.
Okay, that video was made well before the first debate. As we could see, if you watched the first debate, she did not absolutely follow her own strategy of not kicking sideways there. Sean Hannity was trying to explain to her, you're in a Republican primary. And she was saying she's running against Joe Biden, which she's not. She's running against 18 other Republican primary hopefuls. And she was saying she doesn't kick sideways, she kicks forward, which I'm sure is a perfectly fine line for a politician to come up with. Politicians are always trying to come up with lines that sound good, that are a good soundbite, that will make its way into television, social media, wherever. But that's not working. You're in a primary. You must absolutely kick sideways unless you do not intend to win. And so when I saw that video with Nikki Haley, I had to ask the question, does she not actually intend to win? Is she not running to win the Republican primary nomination? Is she just running to try and be Donald Trump's running mate? Because it makes no sense to try and say, I'm not going to attack Donald Trump. You're in a primary against him. He's by far out in front of all of you. You must actually attack Donald Trump. It makes no sense not to. And she finally, in the debate, she did. I think she had a better than expected performance. We'll see in the coming days, in the next week or so, how much it affects her polling numbers. And then after her, we have Ron DeSanctimonious, the guy who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Donald Trump when he ran for governor in Florida for the first time around. He absolutely ran on a licking Donald Trump's boots campaign. Donald Trump seems to have taken it as quite a swipe against him for DeSantis to have jumped into the campaign. And Ron DeSantis is the current governor of Florida. Interesting fact, Florida has a law that if you are the governor and you run for president, whatever, you must resign from your position. So the law in Florida, and I was wondering why it was taking Ron DeSantis so long to jump into the primary. A lot of people were asking him about it. He was doing things like taking a trip to Japan. He's only the governor of Florida. It makes no sense for the governor of Florida to take a trip to Japan unless he's going to run for president. And he took his trip to Japan while a lot of people were experiencing flooding in Florida. So he was ignoring his own state to go and try and develop some international bona fides. But he changed the law in Florida. It used to be that if you were the governor of Florida, you had to resign your position in order to run for president. He changed the law where he can still be governor, run for president in the primary. If he loses, he can go back to still being governor. Ron DeSantis, I mean, he's that squishy, he's that weak, he's that pathetic. And honestly, I assume he knew he had no chance in this primary because he wanted to make sure his job as governor was still going to be there when he was done. And so he had the law changed. He's a former House of Representatives member from the Florida 6th District. And he's chosen so far to base his entire campaign on fighting woke ideology. Again, a very ambiguous term that even people on the right can't define. Just a culture war bunch of crap. Ron DeSantis, if you've watched many of the videos since he's been running and sometimes not running, and I knew he was going to be running because I live in Nevada. I literally live in the state of Nevada and was getting campaign material from Ron DeSantis. So there's no way he's having campaign material sent out to states across the nation and does not plan to run. But when people would ask him, he would say, I'm not running, so I don't know what you're talking about. While his campaign was actually sending out campaign material. I cannot vote for the governor of Florida, so therefore it makes no sense for him to send that campaign propaganda to me and other people in other states unless he was planning on running for president. So he spent a good amount of time lying to try and avoid answering questions. Because every time somebody brought up Donald Trump's name, it looked like Ron DeSantis pissed himself a little bit. He was terrified of having to answer the question of Donald Trump, the person you would have to compete against if you ran in the primary. He has these really odd facial expressions, and literally at one point, wealthy donors to his campaign told DeSantis he needed to fix his face, which should be a telling sign, should be a bad sign that tells you maybe I need to get out now, once I have donors telling me I need to fix my face. But he doesn't fix his face, he still makes the odd expressions, and Ron DeSantis is what you get if you have a empty husk of a shell of a human being who's able to walk around and operate normally in society. There is nothing to this guy. His entire time as governor of Florida has been virtue signaling with political propaganda and political theater the whole time he's been governor. He's not tried to do anything to help the people of Florida. It's all been to help Ron DeSantis try and develop this reputation of being the guy who fights woke or whatever that means to a Republican's ears. And meanwhile, Florida has suffered. I mean, Florida is very mediocre. I mean, Ron DeSantis is trying to say he wants to bring Florida to the rest of the nation. You look at Florida, they're middle of the road everywhere. They don't stand out at all in any significant way among the various metrics you would measure a state by, as far as income, education, all that stuff. They're just middle of the road out of 50 states. You also have Tim Scott, who did make the debate stage. Some of you, if you watch the debates and you're now listening to this video, you may recognize who he was in debates, but maybe before now you couldn't have said what his name was. Tim Scott is a senator from South Carolina, very forgettable. There is no charisma, nothing that's going to get people fired up about a Tim Scott presidential run. He could be put into the group of zero chance. He's polling very low. Like I said, he has no charisma. He's a former U.S. House member, and he's a former member of the South Carolina State House. He is also a career politician. Tim Scott is 57. He's one of the people that I assume is doing this. He's a sitting senator. He already has a position in government. He's doing this, I assume, to get his name out there, to get his voice and face out there, and to start working on building something for the future. He's got enough years left that in 2028, 2032, he could be showing back up in a primary, trying to work on whatever bona fides he creates for himself in this go-around. Then you have Chris Christie, former New Jersey governor. He left office as New Jersey governor with massively low approval rating. His approval rating was literally 15% when he left office. Somebody in 2018 or 2019 asked him about his horrible approval rating when he left office, and he said, I don't care, I'm not running for office. So I don't care what it was. But now he's running for the Republican primary, and that's going to be brought up. It's already been getting brought up now. It'll be brought up in the future. He was on the Donald Trump transition team, and he very much is an attack dog. Chris Christie is someone who has been attacking Donald Trump fiercely in this campaign. He has attacked Donald Trump fiercely, and He is very much a more of an older school right-wing Republican, and he's usually pretty good, particularly on debates. I think Chris Christie on this first Republican debate had a subpar performance. Chris Christie, again, is the guy who single-handedly destroyed Marco Rubio's political career. I don't believe Marco Rubio has a chance of increasing anywhere beyond being a senator from Florida, which is where he is now. And he barely won his last re-election bid. But it was Chris Christie who absolutely demolished him on a debate stage and left Rubio in the position he's in. And I question when Chris Christie got into this race. I mean, he's very anti-Trump. People boo him when he talks against Trump. And I ask myself, is he in this race because he wants to compete for the nomination? Or is he in this race because the Republican Party wants him to go out and demolish Trump, which he can't do if Trump is not on stage? You may say that's a smart move on Trump's part to avoid the debate, so Chris Christie does not end up demolishing him in any way. I would say it's the coward's way out, but Republicans seem to love cowards. Then you have Vivek Ramaswamy. He has no political experience. He's the co-founder and executive chairman of Strive Asset Management, also a former hedge fund employee, and he is the founder of Roivant Sciences, a biotechnology firm. And quickly about his experience with Roivant, his biotechnology firm was not developing medication. He was buying medication that had failed on its trials to try and get his biotechnology group to work it to where it could then pass. One of the drugs he purchased had failed 3 clinical trials. His company purchased the rights to the pharmaceutical, pulled in a lot of funding from investors, worked the drug, put it through a 4th trial. It failed, but he sold his company before it failed. So he had purchased the drug, claiming they were going to guarantee it passes through the trials, pulled in a lot of investor funding, sold his company, made a ton of money, and left the investors holding the bag. So he is typically your very, very much right-wing, super capitalist mentality guy. It doesn't matter if somebody gets screwed, as long as I make money, it's good. And for Vivek, I have a number of videos to play. For Vivek Ramaswamy, as I watched a town hall that was held by this guy named Patrick Bet-David, and I also want to do a video on Patrick Bet-David. He seems to be a very wealthy guy who made his money through a multi-level marketing scheme, which I have to disagree with multi-level marketing schemes altogether, but let's go with the first Vivek video.
I'll tell you a bit about me. My parents came to this country 40 years ago with literally no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while getting married, raising our 2 sons. That's the American dream. And the thing that is remarkable about this country is that my story, as successful as I've been, it's not an extraordinary story. It is a normal story in a country that is extraordinary. And the reason I'm in this race is that I genuinely worry that that American dream will not be available to my 2 sons and their generation unless we, all of us, do something about it.
So there, that video Vivek was bringing up, and he talked about truth a lot in his campaigns. Vivek Ramaswamy there was saying that his family immigrated to this country with no money, and through hard work, dedication, whatever, blah, 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 they accomplished the American dream. Vivek was able to go to Ivy League schools, get fancy degrees, and go don't go on to make the money he's made. The problem I have with that is that you can't be poor and move to America. You can't be, unless you can't immigrate through the normal process there. And I promise you his parents were not refugees seeking asylum from India. I mean, from India you have to hop on board a plane or a ship to get to America. And one of the things you have to do if you are going to immigrate to the United States is you have to fill out a income worksheet. You could call it an income or wealth worksheet. That is, you have to show that you make enough money or have enough money saved up that you will not be a burden on our social safety net from day one. I don't care where you're from, who you are. If you're immigrating to America, you have to show that you are not going to be a suck on the social safety net from day one. So for his parents to immigrate here, they had to show that they either had a good enough income coming here or they had enough money saved up in a bank that the government says that is enough money. For instance, you could make, say, $65,000 per year. Perhaps that's a threshold for two people to immigrate here with no children. In lieu of that kind of income, say they had $350,000 saved up in the bank, and the government says, okay, with $350,000, you should be able to live on those savings until you're able to work and start supporting yourself. You will not be a drain on the system. Vivek Ramaswamy's parents were both college-educated professionals. His parents immigrated to the United States from the province in India with the lowest amount of poverty and with the highest number of residents having college degrees. It's over 90% of the residents in the province he comes from have college degrees, post-high school degrees. His father was an engineer and a patent attorney for GE. His mother was a psychologist. His parents, I don't know how much money they made. I don't know his parents at all, but looking at their life, a patent attorney / engineer for GE and a psychologist had a very comfortable income. Perhaps GE was hiring his father. That's one way his parents could have gotten here with having little money, was as if his father was being hired by GE and GE was sponsoring them to move here. And there's another large amount of paperwork that has to be completed in that instance. If that was the case, GE has to show that they could not fill the role they were hiring his father for by some American. They needed to get this guy brought in from India to do it because it was a well-paying professional job. Vivek grew up in a privileged life. Like I said, he has not one but two Ivy League degrees. One from Harvard, one from Yale. He is a child of privilege. In that video he talked about hoping that the American dream was still there for his kids. He's very wealthy. He is someone, the American dream is always going to be there for his kids because they have the family wealth for it to be there. They have the family capital for it to be there. And Vivek Ramaswamy has a lot of scary ideas on how he would run the country. I don't know if he was running the country that the American dream would be there for the rest of us or our kids. Here's video 2.
Z, what's going on? We are hungry for a cause. That's what's going on. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our national history, a moment when the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And that leaves a black hole, a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. It almost doesn't matter what the poison is, actually. And this is where conservatives, even myself at times in the last 3 years, we get too wrapped up in the symptoms. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism. But it's not just politics or culture. Depression.
Okay, in that video, Vivek was attacking Generation Z, saying it's a generation that lacks purpose, that lacks identity. He said they basically lack faith, patriotism, hard work, family values. He's crapping on the youngest generation of this country, people who are being brought into the world at a time where we've already had decades of inflation outpacing wage growth, to where a decent life is hard to reach, particularly for people who have to start at the bottom and work their way into hoping they eventually make a decent amount of money. Like I said, Vivek Ramaswamy was fortunate. He was born into a family that both parents were professionals, made a lot of money. He had I'm sure, charmed childhood, which is why he has 2 fancy degrees and was able to go out and operate and make the money he was able to make. I'm not trying to take away from him whatever he did to start his various businesses, but he has an investment company and he started a pharmaceutical company. 2 companies that are notorious for ripping people off to get the people that work in those companies rich. But I take issue with him trying to claim that his family came here broke. I don't know why it is rich people like Ramaswamy have to feel like they have to claim poverty. Maybe it's trying to ingratiate themselves to a population where they know a majority of the people are just getting by. But it lacks sincerity, and it certainly goes against his moniker of truth. Okay, here's video number 2.
Service protections that stop you as the president from firing employees. Well, I suggest read the law. Turns out that civil service protections only apply to firing individual civil servants. They do not apply to mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I am bringing to the federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. And so you gotta have, at once, a president who is an outsider, is a CEO, understands that if somebody works for you and you can't fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means you work for them because you're responsible for what they do without any authority to change it. Me and Trump both have that. But it's a separate piece of this, which is an outsider who also has a deep understanding of the Constitution. And Hannibal asked the question, I'm grateful he read my 3 books. So if other people want to, you can check out the same thing. I understand the laws and the Constitution of this country. Many of the passages from my book have been quoted in appellate court cases in the last 3 years about actually big tech censorship being suppressed government action. And so that's the combination, Patrick, that will allow me to declare independence from the managerial swamp class. That's the advisors. And then on the practical side of this, we're already starting. We've got a project led by business leaders who I've known for a long time, already recruiting for positions, not just the cabinet level. Who's running the Office of Management and Budget? Who's running the Office of Personnel Management?
Do you have a specific name?
We do. We have lists that we're working down and winnowing down. Absolutely. And far earlier than Trump started.
Fine. So who are these people that are helping you process issues? I understand as a founder, CEO, we both run a company, and there's a reason why we have a board. The board's kind of helping you with the blind spots that you have. So Trump chose Christie as an advisor, right? Christie wasn't a VP, but Chris Christie is the reason why we got Chris Wray, and we're dealing with what the DOJ is doing to Trump, indictment, back to back to back. Trump hired that person, right? Who's in your ear to help you pick the right people in these different positions?
It's not Chris Christie. I'll tell you that.
So,
so it's a group of people, some of whom are ex-government, many of whom, though, are really smart people who are not in government. And I have a strong bias towards that. I think it will take somebody who has a fresh perspective to actually understand who's going to be a bulldog in that role. Here's the mistake Trump made, right? You take those 2 positions I just mentioned, the Office of Management and Budget. That's like the CFO of the executive branch. And the Office of Personnel Management. That's like the head of HR in the executive branch. A lot of presidents make the mistake of putting in people in those roles who are mediators. They're almost like ambassadors for the administrative state back to the U.S. president. I don't want an ambassador for the administrative state. I don't want a mediator. I want a bulldog who is going in there with a fundamentally anti-government bias to see through my directive, to fire large numbers of employees and shut down agencies that shouldn't exist. Now, here's the twist in that. We will get sued when we do this, right? People who are fired are going to say, no, we're going to sue you, we're going to take you to court. This is good. Because the current Supreme Court, which I've studied, which I give Trump credit for, he gave us a great Supreme Court. The justices I filtered for also fit the same description. They agree with me on this 6-3. So what do we do then? Then we win. Now we're driving real long-term change because the next president who comes after me won't have his hands tied in the same way. And so, yes, I think it is a unique combination of somebody who is an outsider, who has been an entrepreneur or an executive or somebody who has led major businesses, created thousands of jobs, but also somebody who has a constitutional depth to be able to act with conviction without what the managerial class tells them. And that's what gives me a sense of obligation to do this, Patrick.
Okay, so you know what's the great thing about business? When business people negotiate, we know what's at stake, right? You're gonna get this much money, you're gonna get this, I'm gonna give up equity, you get to get an additional board seat. It's very black and white, we can do it. The government doesn't work that way. It's a lot of interesting people who look at you and they say, hey guys, this guy's just gonna be here for 4 years, we'll replace him in no time. Everybody's just make him feel good and make him feel like he's special to the president, but he ain't gonna do nothing. He ain't run this country, we'll run this country, we'll get him out of here in no time. That's how they view you.
You got it.
They don't view you as anybody, right?
Cute
They
little
don't
puppet that comes along every 4 years.
So how do you, thinking from the mindset of optimism, we got this, we got a lot of smart people, and these smart people are gonna come and figure this thing out, and they're good at reading people. You know how hard it is to read dark people who have different motives? There's a lot of interesting people in politics that are not loving this country the way you love this country. They want their card. The card that gets them into all these different additional benefits that, you may take away from them. You think they're going to gladly let you take that away from them?
I don't. And so that's why, and this is where a reasonable person could disagree with me on this, but I have a firm conviction in this. That is why we're not coming with the chisel, we're coming with the chainsaw. Because there's no way we could ever manage to. That's a false hubris to think we could have that knowledge. We don't. 75% headcount reduction by the end of the first term. 50% of which has to be done by the first year. You don't move fast, you're behind.
75%?
Yes, 1 out of 4 will stay by the end of the first term. 50% by the end of the first year.
So there you it. Ramaswamy, who he did make the comment that we have a great Supreme Court. And from his perspective, perhaps he believes we do have a great Supreme Court. It's absolutely atrocious, but he is a capitalist, and he trusts that the Supreme Court that we currently have will absolutely support business and right-wing politicians over average Americans. The thing I wanted to key in on this video was he was talking about laying off 75% of the government workforce by the end of his term in office, 50% in the first year. He made the comment that 1 in 4 will keep their jobs, literally, claiming that after his first year in office, after his first year in office, 50% of the government employees will be laid off, and by the end of his term, 75%. Only 1 in 4 who are currently working there will have a job. This would be disastrous for our economy. This would be an insane amount of people getting kicked out of apartments, foreclosures, people losing cars, homes, a vast increase in the unhoused population. The largest sector of workers we have in this country is federal workers. The federal government hires an insanely large amount of people because they have an insanely large job to do. What would this layoff thing create? After the first year, if he accomplished laying off 50% of the workers, things the government does would cease to be able to be accomplished. If he ever got to the 75% point where 3/4 of the government workers were laid off, the government would not be able to accomplish anything. None of the services it provides would be able to be provided. There's just too many people missing. And I honestly assume that's his point, is to just to make the government so weak with so few employees it can't provide anything, and so people start hating the government rather than hating him for doing what he did to the government. And this is the third video from the Patrick Bet-David town hall with Vivek Ramaswamy.
7% of bankruptcies today are due to medical bills. This is a real issue for a lot of people.
Totally is. So I'll go beyond the political platitudes to give you a couple of interesting insights because this is an area I know well. Okay. Can we just put up the Seroquel one?
Sure.
Again, I want to tell you something about that case, which gets to the heart of what's actually wrong. So, is the patent system a good thing? Yes, it is, actually. Patents, you know where patents are mentioned in our laws first? They're actually in the Constitution. Our founding fathers had the value of this. Thomas Jefferson, people got to remember this. He was 24 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Think about that. Now, this is a guy at the age of 24, not only writes the Declaration of Independence, he felt like he needed a swivel chair. I kind of feel like I need a swivel chair here, too. Well, he said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invent it. So he just invented the swivel chair. The swivel chair that we sit on today was invented by Thomas Jefferson at the age of 24 while he was writing the Declaration of Independence. So these guys valued creativity. I mean, something was in the water back then. We got to figure out what that is and bring it back. And so they valued innovation, and they said that that's a property right. And I think that that's good. I think we got to be careful not to say we want to reject something that's been part of our founding culture of the pursuit of excellence and innovation in this country. There's a couple problems with this, is pharmaceutical companies have grown to be expert at playing games with this system. I could go on for hours about the games. I'll just tell you one funny game. It wasn't that funny, but, you know, it's kind of sad, where pharma companies even started engineering deals with Native American tribes that they would enter a complex licensing agreement because the Native American tribe could not be sued by a generics company because it had sovereign immunity in U.S. courts. So that's the kind of game playing that we see. Now, my temptation then is to blame the pharma companies. And believe me, I blame the pharma companies for a lot of things. My whole business was about standing up to pharma companies based on their bureaucratic behavior, but actually really blame the government. Because at the end of the day, you have profit-oriented actors in a free market capitalist system that are going to do whatever within the bounds of the law allows them to extract the most profit. The problem is the government that creates the opportunities for this game playing. How does that come up? Corruption. The pharmaceutical industry is the largest lobbying industry known to mankind. And so why did I ask you to put the Seroquel back up? This relates to real-world issues. I'm going to give you one real-world issue that you're not supposed to talk about right now. What I'm about to tell you is outside of what they call the Overton window, what you're able to talk about in public discourse. But it's the truth. Slogan of this campaign, truth. So I'm going to speak truth here. There has been a direct inverse correlation in the last decade and a half between, a couple of decades, between the rise in violent crime in this country and the loss of psychiatric institutions in this country. So the thing you're not supposed to say that I'm going to say, I think it's the first time in the campaign trail I'm saying it, but I'll just tell you where I'm at. I think we're going to have to bring back psychiatric institutions in this country if we really care about getting to the root cause of much of the violent crime that's plaguing our cities. We shut them down for a long time ago because there were a lot of abuses. We should be careful about those abuses and learn from those lessons of the past. But we can't go in the other direction and pretend like there are people who are automatically going to snap themselves out of their schizophrenic states, badly deranged states that they're in. So why did that happen? Anybody have a guess? Anybody have any idea why I asked him? We had no idea these things were going to come up, but why I asked him to put the Seroquel chart back up there? Seroquel's for bipolar disease. It's a drug for bipolar disease. Guess who lobbied the federal government in favor of the closure of psychiatric institutions? It's the pharmaceutical industry, actually. So I think that we got to be really precise about what the essence of the problem is that when capitalism and democracy share the same bed, bad things happen. What I think we need is some social distancing between the two. Let the capitalists be capitalists, okay? And that's fine. I'm not an apologist for capitalism. In fact, I think we apologize too much for it. You should be able to get ahead through honest work, follow the law however you want to by providing products and services to people who need them. Insurance entrepreneur over here. Biotech entrepreneur over here. I'm proud of that and I won't apologize for it. Capitalism is the best system known to man to lift people up from poverty.
Okay, so in that video you had Vivek Ramaswamy, who was claiming that, one, his company's whole purpose in life was to stand up against pharmaceutical companies. It wasn't. It was to buy pharmaceutical patents cheaply from those companies because they'd failed trial, then try and get it through trial. It's sort of like a high-risk investment kind of thing. You're paying a chunk of money to buy the patent for the pharmaceutical, hoping that your biotechnology company will be able to change it, alter it, to get it through trials, and to make the money off of it. And like I said, if that does not work, the investors get hosed. He was asked about how he would fix the broken pharmaceutical company. He praised the patent system. The patent system for pharmaceuticals is one of the reasons why pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, are able to price gouge. He made the comment that Thomas Jefferson was 24 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was actually 33, still pretty young to be writing such a significant document, but he was not 24. I assume that's just a verbal gaffe on the part of Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek rhymes with cake. And he seems to almost get there. But he doesn't quite. He puts the blame on government rather than the capitalists. It seems, some of these guys talk, and it seems like they're going to get there to what the problem is. Like, for instance, these companies bribing politicians to get their way, and to say that the blame is on the politicians. It's also on the pharmaceutical companies, on the big, not just them, any big companies that are paying these bribes to buy politicians. That's where the blame rests with, partially, certainly partially, possibly mostly, because it's going to be hard to turn down the bribe money. And this is video 4.
So first of all, we need to restore the idea of, I alluded to this in the beginning, government that tells the truth to its citizens. Who lied about the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic? Who lied about what we knew about vaccines and the risks associated with myocarditis and the mandates and school lockdowns? Who understood the extent of pervasive government technology company relationships to be able to do through the back door what the government could not do through the front door? Who actually understood the systematic truth but suppression of a Hunter Biden corruption story on the eve of a presidential election? That you had your social media accounts locked if you dared even send in a direct message? Who wants to know the truth about January 6th? I'd like to know exactly how many federal agents were on site that day. I'm not saying it's one conclusion or another. Just give me the facts. Who wants to know the truth about where I was earlier this week? The Nashville Shooters Manifesto. My view is, tell us the truth.
Okay, in that video, you had Ramaswamy showing the Republican voters that he buys into all of their favorite conspiracy theories. The COVID conspiracy theories, the vaccine conspiracy theories, the myocarditis conspiracy theories related to the vaccines, the school lockdowns, the Hunter Biden laptop conspiracy theories, the January 6th was an inside job by feds conspiracy theory, and he threw in there the Nashville shooter. He needs to see the manifesto, because one thing the right wing will make sure and do is point out if a shooter is non-binary, black, Hispanic, they will point that out, because even though they claim they hate identity politics, they're all about identity politics. But this was Vivek rhymes with cake, letting the Republican voters know that you won't have to change your regularly scheduled program of conspiracy theory soup. If I'm president, I will feed into all these conspiracy theories that you absolutely love, that drive your life, and there's no need to change for that fact.
Then we're going to have to re-enter bilateral trade relationships with Japan, South Korea, India, Vietnam, Australia, you name it. I don't like multilateral agreements because they come with a lot of baggage and garbage about climate change in there that I could care less for.
Okay, in that video you had Ramaswamy talking about trade agreements, saying he would prefer individual trade agreements with individual countries instead of large regional agreements. And one of the things he mentioned is these large regional agreements, you also have to put in things to account for stuff like climate change. And he is very much, presents himself very much as a climate change denier. Another, for me, that's you're out. Even if I was voting in the Republican primary, I would say that's beyond the bore, you're out. Would not vote for him just on the climate denial side. And so there you have all these candidates so far, except for one. We still haven't gone over the one candidate who was not at the debate, and that is Donald Trump, number 45. He was the 45th president. He's been impeached twice, the only president to be impeached twice. Like I said, when I made this graphic for this video, he had 3 indictments. Now he's got 4. He's been indicted 4 times, twice federally, twice by states. He has a state indictment in New York, a state indictment in Georgia now, and he's got the federal indictment in Florida for the classified documents, and he's got the federal indictment in D.C. for the January 6th stuff. And he is facing what is going to be very difficult court battles to win. I mean, he is so guilty. He's oozing guilt. Donald Trump, to me, seems to be terrified of whether he's going to end up in prison for the end of his life or not. And but right now, for this primary, it does not matter. For the primary, it does not matter. Donald Trump is massively ahead. It's hard to see, considering he's been indicted 4 times. I mean, even if he was to get convicted and sentenced twice out of these 4 indictments prior to the primary election, I do not see him losing. Considering Donald Trump's whole goal is going to try and push all of these indictments, all of these court cases back as far as he can, I don't know that he'll see the inside of a courtroom prior to the primary voting. The primary voting starts in January. It's right now late August. We're approaching September. We're already in the last half of the year, and the Iowa caucus is in January. We've got more debates coming up, but I don't know that anyone is going to be able to supplant Donald Trump. Like I said, I'll do a video on the recent Republican debate, but that's the state of the Republican primary. There's 19 people in it, although it seems like there's only one, honestly, until Ramaswamy or DeSantis or Haley or whoever ends up gaining momentum. Unless that happens, Trump's walking away with this. I mean, I understand why he avoided the debates. He had made the point that the only thing he can do right now is screw up by showing up to the debates. And he's also got the attack dog of the Republican Party, Chris Christie, so far in the debates. We'll see if Chris Christie continues making the goals required to be at future debates. And honestly, there's a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats and a lot of independents that the one thing they want to see is Donald Trump and Chris Christie on the debate stage together, to see if Chris Christie, who has been very vocal against Donald Trump, can put together that kind of debate performance he did in 2016 when he demolished the career of Marco Rubio. In order for that to happen, Donald Trump would have to show up to one of the debates, and Chris Christie would still have to be a candidate when he got there. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if Chris Christie's running because the Republican Party wants him to go and attack Trump and try and propel one of the other more party-friendly candidates to the top of the pack. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of attacks on Vivek Ramaswamy, so perhaps the Republican Party does not want him to go to the top, but certainly a DeSantis or a Haley or a Pence or a Christie, any of these safe candidates who are absolutely going to do the bidding of the Republican Party's donors, they're completely happy with that. And honestly, for my part, right now, if I had to vote in a Republican primary, I would probably vote for Chris Christie. I doubt he and I would agree on much, if any, policy. But he is very vocally opposed to Trump. He makes very cogent and very well sussed out arguments for why Trump is uniquely unqualified to be president. Chris Christie was very unpopular when he left office as governor. He's not that popular among the Republican Party. Plus, he attacks Trump. And until the voters turn on Trump, he really doesn't have a reasonable chance to win this. Right now, it's Donald Trump's primary to win or lose based on what he does and if it affects at all the Republican voters. Right now, the Republican voters, their cult of personality is Donald Trump. We'll see if anything makes that change. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for making it through to the end. If you made it through to the end, please give us a like, a subscribe, and have a good day.